Batman. Guess who we're talking about? Hit the music.
Welcome to the Captain Fizz and Mask Guys show. I am Captain Fizz.
And once again, greetings from the seventh moon of thunder. I think I'm going a little too loud.
When are you not going too loud?
I think it was a Tuesday.
1947.
I think it was 1946.
Sacre bleu.
Anyways, I am that mask guy, and welcome, guys. Last week we took a hiatus because someone was sick.
Yes. Someone was sick. It was the dog. I blame the dog.
You blame the dog.
I don't have a dog, but I blame the dog.
Okay, you blame the dog.
Yes,
then.
I blame your dog.
My dog?
Your dog got me sick.
My dog is innocent. You haven't seen my dog in a while.
That's
and
why
she
I
misses you.
That's why she got me sick. Your dog is a beast.
This is true.
So, obviously, March 25th means Batman v Superman. And we are going to celebrate such event by talking about Superman and Batman, who arguably are two of the most popular characters in the DC universe.
Well, arguably, probably the two most important superheroes in the DC universe, and arguably two of the most important superheroes, period. I mean, you guys can go up and argue with me if you want. I know that Captain Fizz has currently got his chat room open up for one of his games, so I'm sure you guys would love to go off and argue with me. So, if you like, argue, and I will, laugh at you because you don't actually have a voice here.
See, I agree. I'm not a Superman fan. I've never been a Superman fan. I do appreciate the detail that goes into being Superman or making Superman, but I cannot get into the whole thing. Something about, an invincible superhero just seems absolutely far-fetched and stupid to me, but, and Batman's kind of more, down-to-earth, more realistic, It's a vigilante. He doesn't have superpowers. He doesn't have this. He is a billionaire with money who has nothing better to do but to kick bad guys' butts.
And how is that any more realistic than Superman?
Superman's only weakness is something not even found on this planet, yet somehow pops up more than anything else.
Well, there was this planet that blew up and, if, a rocket ship with, a baby Superman can arrive on Earth, it's quite possible that a bunch of rocks from said planet would arrive with him too, so...
Yeah, but how would Earth know about said rocks and meteor thingies and whatever you want to call them? I just don't understand. Like, it just seems way too accessible for this rare metal thing.
Okay. Now, I need to bring up a fact on this. Kryptonite was actually invented for one of the radio shows because they needed something to use on there to kind of add to the drama. So Kryptonite wasn't even something that was originated in, the comics. It was created for the radio show. So I mean, even before that, Superman was just pretty much God.
Apparently, Batman is an orphan schizophrenic with a crap attitude. I kind of agree. I kind of disagree.
Which, Superman is also an orphan, but, grew up with wholesome values, and,
He could blow things up with his eyeballs. There ain't no wholesome about that.
Well, I mean, it could be worse. He could have been raised by Lex Luthor's father.
Okay.
Which I think came up in an episode of Smallville.
See, I look at it this way. Batman has wicked villains like Poison Ivy, Catwoman, Joker, Mr. Freeze, Harley Quinn. And what the hell does Superman have? A bald old man. It's like...
Well, depending on which version, because in the original comic book, Superman and Lex Luthor actually knew each other as children, and it was an accident in the lab that caused Lex to lose his hair, and he blamed it on Superboy.
Either way, Lex Luthor is nothing more than a walking, talking Professor X. With less powers.
He is, kind of like the evil version of Batman. I mean, he too is a billionaire. He has got all these wonderful toys, but instead of using them to save the world, he's using them to try to destroy one individual.
Yes.
And fails almost every single freaking time.
And I have been instructed that I am an idiot. Actually, in the new Batman v Superman, we see technically both of Superman's, villains, so to speak, Lex Luthor and Zod. I'm sorry, I forgot that Zod was a villain and not a pansy.
Kneel to Zod.
He's a pansy.
Kneel to Zod.
If it wasn't for him being from Krypton, he'd be a pansy.
Kneel to Zod.
I kneel to no one.
Kneel to Zod.
I just don't understand the whole Superman thing. He really doesn't have too many, instances where he needs to be a hero.
I don't know, they had a lot of fun. Do you know that, another interesting fact about Superman is partially responsible for the Ku Klux Klan losing any legitimateness. I can't even say the word. Let's put it this way.
Legitimacy?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's all because of another one of the radio shows. And the KKK actually, at one time, was pretty powerful in the southern states. A reporter went off and gave the writers of the radio show information on the Ku Klux Klan that showed just how idiotic they truly are, and they lost all the credibility afterwards.
Yes, because...
So Superman is responsible for the fall of the KKK.
Yes, because it took that to show how stupid the KKK was.
Honestly, it did, because a lot of people didn't realize about all the idiocy that actually happened in their meetings and stuff. And once that stuff was revealed and shown just how stupid these guys really were, people started laughing at the Klan.
The first rule about KKK Club is you don't talk about KKK Club.
Exactly. But I mean, there is some,
Why are we talking about this?
I don't know. It's just interesting stuff. I had a friend.
Are you saying that Lex Luthor is from the KKK?
Quite possibly.
I knew it!
I do know in this movie, it looks like he's created Doomsday, although, technically speaking, if he went off and used the DNA from a Kryptonian to go off and to make something, then wouldn't that technically make it Bizarro?
It would be Bizarro, but I'm not entirely pleased with the whole term of Bizarro as of lately, because that term has been popping up way too much in Supergirl, and it's pissing me off.
Okay, well, Supergirl does not exist in this conversation.
Oh, it does, because...
No, she doesn't!
She is a cousin of Superman,
It doesn't matter! It doesn't matter what you say! She is not in this conversation. Unless we're talking about Smallville, which technically is a story about Superman and not Supergirl, then we can go off and we can talk about her.
I have been informed of a hero that has no enemies. Dr. Manhattan.
Dr. Manhattan is the enemy.
Dr. Manhattan, sure, why not? We'll go with that theory. So yeah, over the years, Batman and Superman have been played by many, 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 many people. And it's amazing the different varieties of people that have played either which one. Most of them on the Superman side, I have no clue who they are or what they are or why they are. Batman, I know more of because Batman is God.
Well, and also part of it though is you've admitted yourself you're not much of a Superman fan, and I mean while we were growing up I know Christopher Reeve, because to me, Christopher Reeve was and always will be Superman.
He is the Superman.
The Superman, because I was a child of the 80s. You're a child of the 90s. And that was during the time when there really wasn't any, real Superman movies, because Christopher Reeve had died and they couldn't seem to, didn't die. He was, he was in an accident that caused him to be paralyzed from the neck down. But there wasn't, there was a lot of stuff, and we can't get into on the show. But, I mean, they weren't able to create a movie because of a lot of litigation, that was going on, as well as just some really crappy storytelling. And if you guys want to know more, I think I actually talked about it in one of our early episodes. But anyways, you grew up with, there was like Michael Keaton and then Val Kilmer.
Yes. I made the list. I read the list. You can read
go up and board everybody by listing every single actor.
I'm sorry. This is Batman. You cannot be bored by listening who has been great enough to play Batman. I'm sorry if I want to bore people, I'll talk about Superman more. So the following have played Batman in one way or another. You will probably all know the names because they are pretty much synonymous with Batman.
Synonymous.
Whatever.
It's one of the words I could actually say.
With Superman, you pretty much only recognize one name generally. With Batman, you don't see just one person as being Batman. You see multiple, which is what makes Batman so great, and Superman sucks. So anyways, Louis G. Wilson, Robert Lowry, Adam West, the Adam West, who plays a mayor on, Family Guy, Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, George Clooney, and Christian Bale. All very big names who have played.
And arguably, George Clooney, one of the biggest actors in the world, is also the worst Batman in the history of cinema.
I do agree. I was not a big fan of it.
Batman with nipples. Hashtag that.
Batman with nipples. Wait a minute here.
Hashtag...
All Batmans have nipples.
Yeah, but not on the suits.
Well, maybe it was a frosty day and they decided to poke out. I don't know. There was some logic on their costume design and whatever, and I can't think of any because, well...
But, I mean, it is true. I mean, if you look at the people who played Batman as opposed to the people who played Superman, and, of course, you're going to probably list a couple there. It's interesting because the actors who played Batman, with the exception of Val Kilmer, whose career actually seemed to bomb following, being in Batman and Robin, or was it Batman Forever?
Batman Forever.
It was Batman Forever, pardon me. But, it seems like all the actors who play Superman, their careers actually fizzled following it. Like, Christopher Reeve, came back to do Superman 3 and Superman 4 because he couldn't find anything else to do.
Yeah, ultimately, it's probably because they got so used to such a radical fan base for Superman. I say radical, in a good way. I do love the fan base that Superman has. It is very unique, very widespread. But it doesn't usually, they don't follow the actors into, other ventures or other things. It's generally just Superman, which really sucks if you look at...
I just think that's really weird, though, that, you look at all these actors, and I mean, maybe I'll just quickly go over some of these. Like, there was Superman, it was like Ray Middleton, Kirk Allen. Then there was George Reeves from, who died tragically. Who was the star of, an early TV series. Then Johnny Rockwell, who was going to be on the show that was never aired. Then Bob Holliday, David Wilson, Christopher Reeve, who, again, to me, is Superman. And then, I mean, there's, like, a couple of names I don't recognize here. I mean, there's Dean Cain from Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. There is Tim Daly, who did the animated Superman series. Plus, I noticed you didn't have him on here, but there was the actor who played Clark Kent on Smallville.
I don't classify that as the Superman era.
Well, I mean, honestly, he wasn't actually Superman until the very last episode.
That's why I don't classify it as, as that, which is kind of the gray area because, you look at, for example, Gotham. David Mazouz plays, Bruce Wayne, who becomes Batman. So he is Bruce Wayne, but technically he's also not. He's not Batman
Well, no,
yet.